Yay! I can hear the Avengers in the background. Okay, you do realize that's like a summoning charm for your child.
What's that?
Closing the door is like a summoning charm for your child.
He's watching Avengers Endgame. It'll be okay.
I have no idea what your child's attention span is, so maybe.
Okay, so today we will be discussing Alanna The First Adventure by Tamora Pierce. Tamora is one of my favorite authors of all time.
Somebody beats her?
I don't know. I really like V. Schwab's books, but I don't know if it's like going to top
Last.
Tamora
Yeah.
or what. But I really, really like her books. But it could just be like I just learned about her in the past couple of years, so I'm obsessed right now. But I've loved Tamora's books since middle school, I think. Maybe earlier. When I
God,
first
how old are the books?
What?
I said, God, how old are the books?
I think Alanna's First Adventure was published in like the 1980s. Original copyright is 1983.
Yeah. My first Tamora Pierce book was a Circle book, Sentry's book. I was in high school, freshman year.
Yeah, so 1983 this was originally published.
I wasn't even born yet.
I know, right? But Kells were my first books of hers, and I was somewhere in like right around middle schoolish. But this is the story of a girl who disguises herself as a boy to become a knight. This specific book covers all of her page years and ends with her being chosen as a squire.
So that's like 4 years and 250 pages.
Yeah. Yep. So she has a twin brother. Her brother's being sent off to become a knight. She's being sent off to become a lady. They switch places and rewrite the letters that her dad was sending so that there's two boys instead of a boy and a girl. Her brother then goes to the place where she was supposed to go, where they also train people
Magic.
in magic, and then he'd move on from there to more advanced magic as he gets older. And she takes his place to become a knight. And while she's there, she makes friends with the Crown Prince, his cousin.
Are you laughing at me?
You have a cookie.
Actually, I have a box of cookies.
I want a lemon white chocolate chunk cookie.
I'm sorry.
So she becomes friends with the Crown Prince and his circle of friends. She also makes friends with a character named George Cooper,
The King of Thieves.
who is the King of Thieves and happens to be one of my favorite characters.
It's one of Alanna's favorite characters too.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So she goes through, and the book covers 4 years. She starts out, she's like 10 when the book starts, and so she's about 14 when it ends. And it's basically early training. She's learning horseback riding and sword fighting and like regular classes too. Like she learns a lot of mathematics and strategy and all sorts of different stuff.
History.
the history of their lands, and everything that they do. She discovers very quickly that there's no such thing. Like, they keep saying, anything you don't finish in class, do in your free time. And eventually she completely runs out of free time and is never able to.
Why are you saying eventually? That was day one.
Yeah, day one. She has no free time left by the time everything's done. She tries to finish everything she can and fails, and discovers it's a vicious cycle of never ever finishing homework, and therefore being stuck, like, doing even more extra work because she didn't finish, and so on and so forth. And apparently it's a giant lesson on chivalry and just taking your punishments. And yeah, she also happens to be the smallest of the pages, because in part because she's a girl, and also just because she's a small person. Like, she ends up being really short by the time she's an adult. I don't know exactly how tall, but they definitely emphasize the fact that she's quite short, probably about as short as we are. And
I'm still waiting for my growth spurt. I never got my middle school growth
you're
spurt.
31, Robyn. Your growth spurt.
I never got my middle school growth spurt.
Neither did I. There's significant bullying that occurs throughout the first half of the novel. Because she's the smallest, she's targeted by a character named Alanna of Balvin.
I think he's just a jerk and he just targets anybody.
He specifically picks on her, though, because he can't pick on any of her friends. She's the weakest of all of her friends.
Well, that's because her friends are also like 4 years older than her.
That, and you kind of can't bully the crown prince. It's
that
a little
too.
difficult. And so she, doing the knightly thing, just accepts the fact that he just keeps beating on her and tries to learn to fight him off, and actually goes to George and gets help in that, because she knows that with her size she can never beat him in a fair fight. She has to be able to fight dirty and has to know how. And
Slytherin.
Oh yeah, she's totally a Slytherin.
That sounds like something I would do, except I would be way less honorable about it, and there would be poison involved.
And she actually ends up feeling really guilty when she finally beats him.
Because it wasn't a fair fight.
Because
although there's really no such thing as a fair fight between the two of them.
Right, like she has to pull out dirty tricks, because otherwise she just gets wailed because she's tiny, like,
and untrained.
Exactly. And the whole time, like, all the adults know what's going on and they basically do nothing about it, which is pretty shitty. One of my favorite quotes in here is from Lord Miles, who is where is it? Second. Does she really beat Rowland that early? Wow. There's only 7 chapters in this book, and so it's a really, really quick read, but it, like...
I don't even know how to read a book that's... So the version I had was some relatively new edition that has Tamora explaining how she wrote the book.
Oh, really?
Yes. It was an adult book. It was one giant adult book. But she worked at a group home for girls. And she couldn't read them the adult book. So she would retell it as a kid's book, as a teen book. And then she turned that into what actually got published. In the 70s. She wrote this in the 70s. You just need to flag the book.
Yeah, the bad part is I have, like, book flags to be able to do stuff like this, and I don't use them.
This is why I like reading things on my Kindle, It's because I can search the book for it. I just type in what I want.
But there's a really, really important conversation she has with Lord Miles about bullying and what it means to be a knight. And
I mean, she has a lot of important conversations with Sir Miles.
I know it's basically all about, like, he harps a lot about chivalry and the problems with chivalry. And here we go.
Yay, finally.
He went on bitterly, I truly love our code of chivalry. We are taught that noblemen must take everything and say nothing. Noblemen must stand alone. Well, we're men, and men aren't born to stand alone. Nobles are, Alanna replied, or they have to. Isn't that the same thing? Miles shook his head. No, it isn't. He sighed. You'll have to fight him in the end. I know, sir. Alan, he's taller and heavier than you. He'll kill you. Alanna put her orange aside. Then I fight him until he lets me alone or till I get big enough to beat him. I can't let him walk all over me, Sir Miles. She stopped, horrified. She had almost admitted she was a girl. She rushed on. When you're little like me, you either quit and get picked on all the time or you stick it out. I have to stick it out. Miles made a face. Run along to your supper. She got up to go. Alan, sir, if you have to hit low. She grinned and bowed. Thanks, Sir Miles. I'll keep that in mind. I really liked the fact that he kind of pointed out the hypocrisy of the code of chivalry. Yeah. He has serious issues with the fact that the pages are taught to just take their punishments and not say whether it's fair or not. And it's very significant because we do that now. Like, we teach kids that the way to handle a bully is to fight back. Like, most people, if you're people assume the only reason why you get bullied is because you don't fight back, you don't stand up for yourself, you don't blah 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 blah. And it's not true. Like, people just, like, bullies are bullies, and usually it's because their families are bullies and they're taught to be bullies, and it's way more complicated than just don't let it happen and letting kids police themselves. Like, it's super, like, it doesn't really get into it in this book because she ends up training with George and then takes him down and he runs away like a little girl in shame because he got beat up by a smaller child. And what?
Who happens to be a girl, but he doesn't know that.
No, he doesn't know that at that point in time. But he one of the things that growing up I loved about this book is that it did show bullying in a very realistic light and showed kind of how a lot of adults tend to deal with it, in just fighting's bad, but at the same time beat up bullies, fight back against bullies, even though fighting's bad, and then you get punished for fighting. Because yeah, that happens. Like, she finally beats up her bully and then she gets punished for fighting. And even all the times she gets wailed on and doesn't win, she still gets punished for fighting. Even though she didn't have a choice at all. And then there's this really hilarious scene in chapter...
You have a 1 in 7 chance of being right if you flip a coin.
Chapter 6. In chapter 6, Alanna hits puberty. And she is totally unprepared for what hitting puberty as a girl means. Oh. Now, she's been slowly getting like slight breasts that she's been binding down over the years. She's been stuff like that, but she actually, like, her dad's basically not in her life because after her mother's death, he basically just shut down and he doesn't care about anything. So he packs his kids off for other people to take care of. And nobody's explained to her how becoming an adult woman works. So she wakes up covered in blood and afraid she's dying.
I mean, it makes sense.
For like, and as somebody who never really got the talk from her parents, the only things that I figured out about that were like coming from watching my older sister go through it and stuff. Like, I remember her having lots of hot flashes and stuff when she was like when we were younger, and then like hearing my mom talk to her about stuff as things started happening. So I kind of knew, but I could have easily been Alanna in that I didn't have that conversation with my parents at all.
I have heard of women who definitely thought they were dying when that happened to them.
Right. So it's a very interesting point of view of like not knowing something's going to happen and then suddenly you're just bleeding from a place that most of us girls don't think a whole lot about that area before that starts happening, because like we're kids and like there's no.
But I mean, really, if blood started coming out of anywhere, it's just like, this is not
Right, unless you've been prepared for it.
Oh, I was totally prepared.
And most of our moms do some sort of like preparing of us to some extent.
I don't know. I've heard a lot of horror stories. I've heard a lot of horror. I'm like, and my mom didn't give me to talk. My mom gave me a book and said, "Come to me if you have any questions."
That's still like you got it. Like you understood. You knew what was.
I know. But I mean, like the number of people who like complete like. I think once people feel comfortable enough to tell me, like I have way more stories about people freaking out than I do of them not freaking out.
It's possible. But so she thinks she's dying. She's got to find a healer that she can actually talk to because, of course, she can't go to the palace healers because
she's a girl.
Tell them she's a girl. And if she says she's just bleeding, they'll want to check out where she's bleeding from. And so she runs to George. She tells him the truth. And he takes her to his mother, who's a healer. And his mother explains, this is normal. It's going to happen every month. And she's all like, why? And she goes, she kind of explains the whole, unless you're going to have, like, you're pregnant, this is something you're going to have to learn how to deal with. And she goes, I have magic. I shouldn't have to deal with this. My body shouldn't do things I don't want it to do. And the Mistress Cooper is just kind of like, yeah, and she kind of walks her through what it means. She gets her, like, one of the cool things about this universe is you can get charms that keep you from being pregnant, and they're basically foolproof. Yeah. Like, all you have to do is wear a charm made by, like, blessed by a healer in a certain sort of way. I'm not entirely sure how. They don't ever explain how the charms are made. But you don't have to worry about getting pregnant at all. And Alanna's kind of like, yeah, I don't care about any of that because I'm not planning on sleeping with anybody right now. And Mistress Cooper kind of goes through like how intimacy works and that sort of thing. And it's really kind of cool to see that conversation happen within a book, to see somebody discovering that part of their of growing up within a book. It's not something that's talked about in very many books. At least not with such stark honesty. It's usually pretty clothed in, like, I had some things for that time of the month, and that's about it. Like, they don't really go into details on how things are going, like how it works, and it's refreshing to see it explained to a young, I think she's like 11, 12-year-old at the time.
Yeah.
Explaining all of that and how she goes forward with her life, understanding that her body's going to do things she doesn't want it to do. And so she manages to get through all of that and survives, because, you know, she's not dying. We never are. We feel like it, but we're not.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure. I haven't died yet.
Are you sure? I mean, have you looked at yourself in the mirror? You're kind of ghostly. What would you do if I didn't make fun of you all over the internet?
I don't know. But so she goes through all of that. She works through her years of paging. When we get to the end, Jonathan's about to become a knight.
We
And
skipped something.
what?
We skipped something.
What did I skip?
The sickness.
Oh, yeah, that was actually before. So there was a point in time when a plague came to the palace and the city that surrounds it.
And just the city. It didn't exist anywhere else.
Right. It was just in the capital city of Tortal. This illness was called the sweating sickness, and it hit tons of people, the queen included. And the way that it worked is it drained a healer of their abilities, which is not, like, it takes so much of their power to fight it off that they basically not be able to help anybody else once they healed one person.
Didn't many of them die too?
What?
Didn't some of them die too?
Yes, if they went past the complete draining of their powers, they die. That happened to quite a few of them. And people who were hit really, really hard would, right off the bat, generally wouldn't make it. As the city gets ravaged by the sickness, several of Alanna's friends get sick. One of them dies. Then, after all the palace healers are drained of their abilities, guess who falls ill?
No, it's not Alanna.
It's Prince John, the only child of the king and queen, and they can't have any more kids. And one of the head healer of the palace, Duke Baird, says that it's very clear to him that the illness is magically created because it's only in the city where the palace exists, and that it's very convenient for it to have hit the crown prince after all the healers were gone.
And also, no sickness drains magic like that. No natural sickness.
Right, not that much. Like, it usually takes helping probably hundreds of patients to be drained the way that the palace healers were drained in.
Otherwise, it would be kind of silly to be a healer. Like, you can heal one person. That's it.
Right. And obviously, like, they don't go into how the magic works as much in this book. But the way that it's described throughout the various novels of Tortal's universe, every magic wielder has like a pool of magic inside them, and they use bits and pieces of it, And various different people have various different amounts, and if so, stronger people can obviously do more. And you eventually, like, if you use a lot of it all at once, eventually it'll deplete. But it shouldn't, like, healer's magic shouldn't be depleted that quickly after helping one person. And it'll come back, but it takes time. It takes days of resting and sleeping, and
That they didn't have because everybody was sick.
exactly.
They
And
stopped having classes because the instructors were sick and all the kids were sick.
yeah. And so John gets sick, and Alanna, who just so happens to be she has magic, and part of her magic, she has a talent for healing. Now, she hasn't told anybody at this point that she has magic at all.
She doesn't like using magic.
She feels like it's cheating. And so she ends, like, her guilt over not using her abilities after her friend, like, when one of her friends dies, she starts questioning why she hasn't told anybody, why she isn't helping, why she isn't using her ability to heal to help somebody. And so when the prince gets sick, she goes to Duke Baird and says, I'm a healer, let me help, let me try. And miraculously, she saves Jonathan's life. And then they start questioning who could possibly be responsible. I believe they never actually spell out the list of the sorcerers who have the kind of magic that it would need to be used to create the sweating sickness. But one of the sorcerers is somebody named Roger of Conte, who just so happens to be Jonathan's cousin.
And next in line for the throne.
Yes, right behind Jonathan. So the king ends up recalling the Duke of Conte to the palace because they want since they were clearly magically under attack, they wanted a magician there to help. And they trust him. And Alanna doesn't. Alanna spends a lot of time avoiding the Duke.
I just got to say, I don't remember what happens in the rest of the book, but because Alanna doesn't like him, he's evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like my entire reason for why he's the bad guy for the rest of the book. Alanna doesn't like him. He's clearly evil.
He never does anything in this book, though.
Yes, but her irrational, like, from Alanna doesn't get irrationally angry, which, yes, right now she's her hatred right now is completely irrational. But that totally means that he is going to at some point turn out to be evil.
Because just because she's not an irrational person, but she does have very good instincts.
Okay, just saying. I was reading when she met him and all the conversations between them, like, oh, he's evil. Like, he didn't do anything. It's just like, oh yeah, you're evil.
Yeah. And she suspects that he's responsible for the sweating sickness because he's one of the 5 sorcerers in the world who could.
And he's also next in line for the throne.
Yes, which gives him motive.
And Jonathan's like, but he could have killed me literally at any point in my life.
But he has to do it in a way that nobody would suspect him, or, there'd be issues. So at the end of the book, they're going to a place called Persepolis, which is in the desert. There's a map. Hold on, let me pull.
I thought it's not just called the Southern Desert. I already turned my book in.
It is the Great Southern Desert.
Oh, I remembered something.
The Great Southern Desert has multiple tribes of nomadic people called the Bajir. they are kind. Their society structure is very. I feel like they're kind of Bedouin-like.
This is a shame, as a belly dancer, that I say this. I know nothing about the Bedouins.
They only have one city in all of the southern desert, and that is Persepolis. And their myths say that they built that city to keep an eye on another city that's on the horizon there called the Black City, where demons live. And they have a myth saying that the Nightly One and the Burning Brightly One will come and free them from the Black City. Now, according to the myth, they're gods. However, when the squires that are becoming knights go there for training to learn about the Bajir people, and Jonathan's going to learn about them as well, since technically they're part of his realm and he should know about his people, even those that are different. Alanna gets to tag along because Jonathan asks the Duke Garrett, who is the head of the training program for the pages, if she can come, because even though she's a page and the pages are going somewhere else, everybody thinks of her as a little squire because she always hangs out with the squires.
She's a little squire who has an interest in page things.
Yes.
And apparently the pages think of her that way too.
Yes, apparently. Yeah. And so she gets to go, and Jonathan basically gets dared to go to the Black City by his cousin. Like, he doesn't say it, but he says, I'm super powerful and I'm not even going to go there, so don't you dare even think about it. And Jonathan's a 17-year-old boy who's like, I can be a man and I'll go and I'll survive, because he's a 17-year-old boy. And so they get there, and the they're told the story by one of the Bajir, Ali Mukhtar, and they call them the nameless ones.
Which is crazy because they totally have names.
Right. That's the Black City, the doom of my people for centuries, ever since we can remember, and our memories reach beyond the days when your palace, Highness, was a palace for the old ones. Our young people have been called to the Black City. Our masters lived there, the nameless ones. They stole our souls and gave us farms and cattle. We swore never to farm again. Legends say we stopped there when we came north over the inland sea. The nameless ones welcomed us and asked us to share their land and farm their crops. All this, the legends say, was green and fertile. Ali's hand swept over the leagues of empty sand. When we saw that they were stealing our spirits, we rebelled. We burned them and their city, and the land turned to dust. After we left, never to return, we built Persepolis so that we might watch the city always. How could you burn them out when they were so powerful? Gary wanted to know. They fear fire above all things, the man replied. Their spirits linger in the city, but they cannot pass the circle of fire we placed around their walls. So every so often, a young person in Persepolis will awaken and try to ride for the city. If they stop, they'll rave and scream and refuse their food, talking only of the city and of the gods who wish them to come there. If we do not let them go, they'll starve themselves. And Jonathan claims that they're probably just running away, blah blah blah, to live life elsewhere, and he ends up being the 17-year-old thick-headed idiot that he is. He decides he's going to go to the city himself because why not? And there they find the Isandir, who are like their description's very similar to gods.
And they're really, really tall.
They're really tall. They're immortal, and they have super evil magic. And
they say it in the book. Magic is just a tool. It is neither good nor evil. They just happen to be evil.
And a fight ensues. Jonathan uses magic to fight them off while Alanna uses her sword because she's Alanna and she doesn't have very good control of her magic. She just lets Jonathan use it to wield, and then she uses her sword. And
her magic sword?
Yes, it's a magic sword made by the old ones, who are an ancient race of beings that nobody really knows a whole lot about.
They're basically they're like Hercules. like they're just like all the Greek, mythological heroes. It's like, that's a little. You're saying they can do what now?
They have ruins and stuff that the old ones left behind, but nobody really knows what happened to them. It's kind of like Atlantis, except less.
They have ruins.
What?
Except they have ruins.
Yeah,
we don't have ruins of Atlantis.
True. But they have these myths about the old ones and what they could do and where they lived and blah, blah, blah. But they also have evidence that they did actually exist, but nobody really knows who they were. They just call them the old ones.
They need archaeologists.
Yes, they do. And so they end up defeating the Isandir, but in the process, they reveal the bad guys reveal that Alanna's a girl to John.
By stripping her naked.
Yes, because of course they do. And so when they finish, Alanna assumes that John's going to reject her, to be all like, "No, you're a girl. You can't be a knight." Instead, he asks her to be his squire.
That was the plan the whole time. This is not just because, I found out you're a girl.
No, he was always that good. He actually said that he had to fight, I think it was Gary, for her as his squire, because Gary said, or Raoul, one of them, said that it wasn't fair that just because he was the crown prince, he gets the best squire. And so it ends with that of them her agreeing to be his squire, and then they go back to Persepolis. And
I do have a question.
What's up?
This has nothing to do with Persepolis. Back to the sickness. So after she healed Jonathan, and she was passed out for 3 days, no one checked on her?
Cora may have.
Okay. Because I'm like, how the heck did she remain hidden while being literally unconscious for 3 days?
Right.
In a palace where they have healers who would check on these things.
Right. Coram probably kept them away from her. Coram is her manservant that came from Trabond, which is her home. So he knows she's a girl.
He's not happy about it.
She threatened him with magic, and he doesn't like magic. That's why he keeps her secret.
I don't even think he realizes she can't really, she doesn't know what the heck she's doing.
And he also agreed to do it because her brother Tom would have made him look like a fool.
Her brother Tom sucks. sucks at sword fighting and horseback riding and
Yeah,
archery and
pretty much
basically
everything you
anything
need to
knightly.
become a knight.
Yeah.
He probably would have washed out of the program.
Do they actually wash anybody out? He just would have been the oldest page ever because he would have never graduated pagedom.
Quite possibly.
Because they say that even though most of the boys go and become squires at 14, it's only if your teachers think you're ready.
Right.
His teachers would have been like, "Oh God, no."
So that's Alanna. We
In
love
7
her.
chapters.
Yes, only 7 chapters. I think book 2's longer.
Well, it can't really be much shorter now, can it?
I wouldn't put it past her.
Okay, tangent. The Twitches books. For like the first 6 books, they continuously get shorter. Me and my high school roommate were looking at them one day because I had them all up on my shelf, and we're like they are noticeably shorter. Like you can see them getting skinnier as you go down the stack.
So as this is one of my favorites, I give it 5 stars because it's Alanna. And even though there's a part of me that's like the writing's really simple, it's a kid's book.
It's not even, you know, a YA book. What is the word for younger than YA?
Middle grade.
Yeah, that one. It's one of those books.
her books get a little bit more YA as the series goes on, but this was technically written before YA was really a thing.
She's basically is YA. Like, you know, she started. I won't say she started it, but
Back when this was published, kids books were just kids books. There wasn't distinctions between like middle grade and young adult and new adult and all that sort of stuff. So I think it technically is classified as it's very middle grade reading. So it's very easy. It's something I highly, highly recommend most people let their kids read. Because I think this helped me with puberty too, since I never actually had that conversation with my mother. So between this and Kel's books, which also address it, and has a like when we get to Kel's books, I'll go into a little bit the parallels between what Alanna, the trauma that Alanna goes through and what Kel goes through. It's a very good book. It helps with like not only the puberty thing, but the bullying thing. Like it helped me feel like I was less alone just because it was a book about stuff that I was going through, that sort of thing. So
I think I knew you by the time I finally got around to reading that.
Reading this one?
Yep. I probably read your copy.
Probably. So my son will be reading it as soon as he gets to chapter book levels, that sort of thing, because he should know too.
Oh gosh. Oh, the things that guys don't know.
I know, right? My son will know them.
As long as he knows that we cannot hold it in like we do our bladders.
Yeah, he's going to know that. I haven't discussed it with him yet, though.
Well, he's 5.
Yeah, and there was a back when he didn't know what privacy was.
He knows now.
What?
He knows now?
Yeah, we've stressed privacy quite a bit. As like at least when it comes to bathroom stuff for a while, to the point where he was at my mother-in-law's one day, and my sister-in-law's kids just go in the bathroom. They don't care if anybody's using it at all. And so they like never close the door ever. And I guess my sister-in-law was in the bathroom at one point, and my son walked over and said, and asked his aunt if she needed privacy. and she thought it was the most adorable thing. And I'm like, your kids should give you privacy sometimes. But he back when he was first learning how to talk, he came into the bathroom while I was changing things and asked me if I was all okay because I was bleeding. And yeah, it was kind of cute. Very sweet. He cried. I was like, "No, buddy, I'm okay."
In pain too.
Yeah. But yeah, so my kid's gonna know. He knows stuff goes on that mommy doesn't feel good, but he does, like, he'll understand soon enough. Next on our reading list, Robyn's gonna hate this. New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. I had to kick Robyn's butt to get through Twilight, so this one's gonna be
Because nothing happens for like 300 pages.
yeah, like this covered it's less than 250 pages, and it covered 4 years and like beating up a bully
and stuff
and saving the crown prince from the sweating sickness and dealing with becoming a woman and then fighting off the nameless ones all in 250 pages. Meanwhile, the first one of this was about the same size as this, and nothing happened. And even when stuff did start happening, they just shoved her in a hotel room. And yeah, like missed most of the action. But we will be reading this next. Maybe more stuff happens.
I mean, less stuff can't happen.
I wouldn't put it past her.
I have to believe somewhere in my soul, or else I will never read this book, that she cannot stoop any lower than that first one.
Okay. I'll let you believe that.
In my soul, I have to believe that, or else I'll be like, F this, I am not reading this book. And I'll be sitting here with popcorn the next time we talk saying, oh my God, that happened? Really?
If I'm the only one reading this series by the time we get to Breaking Dawn, I'm going to be pissed at you.
I mean, is that really different than usual? You always have a level of pissed at me for something.
That's not true.
I'll find something to insult you about, and then you'll be upset, and then we'll be back to that level of pissed. I'm like that the Sour Patch Kid in a commercial where first they're sour and then they're sweet. except they're not even sour, they're just assholes. It's like, here, we're gonna wake your dad up for you when you're trying to sneak in the house in the middle of the night. And then they give her a sweater to cover up her skanky clothes. And it's just like, dude, that's not helping. She's still walking in the middle of the night. You should have woken him up in the first place.
Or the one where they cut off a girl's hair and then gave her a hug.
And then and I'm sorry, but these people are just like, oh, that's so great. I'm like, I'm sorry, if that was me, I would still be pissed about the first thing.
I kicked the Sour Patch Kid. They're not even that tasty.
No, I would probably I would want to just for my own satisfaction, like just want to see it melt. So there'll probably be fire involved.
Okay, so New Moon next, and I'll have to figure out how to do the new joint.
Good luck with that
conversation thing, because Hangouts on Air is going away tomorrow. So I may end up trying to figure out on a day off next week, depending on what my schedule is looking like for work, a test thing to see if we can figure it out. Because I don't know if just doing, I don't think just doing, it's taking, like it says for quick streaming, try YouTube webcam. And I don't know if we'll be able to talk on YouTube. No. So we'll have to figure something out.
Why are they doing this?
I don't know.
Il ne nous aime pas.
But we'll have to figure something out. If nothing else, we can always like chat and record it again. Not as fun, but we'll figure something out.
Okay. I'm going to just sound as pathetic as possible.
Okay.
If I sound pathetic when I make a video and I sound pathetic and I send it to YouTube, do you think they'll change their mind before tomorrow?
Probably not.
Gosh, you are just squashing my hope here.
But yes, so we will have to figure out something, and we'll be back hopefully soon. I think I might be able to finish this depending on stuff before the end of the month. It was a pretty easy read last time. Like super easy. Scary easy. Like it hurt my head, but it was a quick read. It was bad. I actually, when I checked it out, like, because it came in at the library last night, the librarian was like, "Didn't you already read these?" And I was like, "No, I haven't. I'm kind of ashamed to be checking it out."
Why would the librarian even ask that? I mean, we reread things all the time.
She did say that she's known people who have read things like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, "Yeah, I haven't read it once." I know, right?
I'm like, I read Twitches like every 3 years.
Yeah.
Since high school.
Granted, usually stuff that I reread, I don't borrow from the library.
Sometimes I do. But luckily for me, my librarians don't know me.
Yeah, my library is small. Unfortunately, that also means that we have a very small access to various audiobooks, and it makes me sad.
Oh yeah, audiobooks. I was about to say you have the Melcat. I don't have the Melcat. And I'm sad because now that I moved, I might not have access to one of my libraries when my card expires.
Aw.
I know.
That's sad. But yeah, I get it's mostly the audiobooks because like there's so many books that I want to read, and it's so much faster to listen to them on audio because I can listen while I work.
Whistle while you work.
So, yeah. But we will see you guys next time. We managed to keep this one fairly on point. Amazing.
I mean, if you really want me to derail it, I could totally derail it.
Sure.
Descendants 3 is coming out on Friday.
What's that?
Descendants 3 is coming out on Friday. That's 2 days from now. Are you laughing at me?
If I wasn't working, my kid would probably be watching it.
So I don't have cable. I have to see if I can stream it from Xfinity Go. Yeah, Alex has been sending me things and keeping me up to date, and I want to know why they've only made one music video so far. For Descendants 2, by this time they had released 4.
Maybe they want to keep them a secret.
That's what Alex is figuring, that there's probably plot points they don't want to tell us in the rest of the song.
It's quite possible.
They're
the first time when the first movie came out, I didn't even know it was a musical till I sat down and watched it.
Well, that's your own fault.
It the lead up to it totally didn't say anything about it being a musical.
I think the first thing I saw for it was a music video.
That I never saw one.
The first time I watched it, I had already memorized Rotten to the Core.
I just remember a conversation I had with Sean where it wasn't out yet, and he goes, "You know, this is going to be a musical, right?" I'm like, "No, it's not." And then he made me watch Rotten to the Core.
I'm rotten to the core, rotten to the core. They re-recorded Rotten to the Core with more people,
Okay, guess we'll have to see.
which is what I want to see, but they won't show me, probably because they don't want you to know that Audrey's evil.
Is it any surprise?
Well, don't forget their target demographic is like 9.
Right, but literally what I've seen of Descendants 3 so far clearly shows she's going evil.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, think about it. And there's a short where she is just recapping everything that happens, and you still can't tell she's evil in that. Oh yeah, she's totally evil. And like the latest, maybe not the latest, but something that came out in the past week has her spinning around with the staff looking evil, but you can't exactly tell it's her because it's really dark. And I think that is them trying to keep it secret. It's just that anyone with 3 brain cells to rub together can figure it out.
I have to go. My
No,
kid's crying because he's watching Avengers Endgame, and I probably
Which part is he at the end?
Give me just a second. He is post Nat pre.
Okay. I that Nat scene was sad.
People
See,
are being.
we could totally derail this.
Yeah, I gotta go because my kid's gonna start bawling his eyes out in like the next half an hour, like full on. Bye, everybody.